After a tumultuous session of the Maryland General Assembly that including having to deal with a $3.5 billion deficit, which was resolved by shoveling off millions of dollars of state obligations from the state to the counties and increasing taxes, which one of the pundits described as a strategic fund reallocation. It was not a surprise that the Montgomery County Executive and County Council would have some hard choices to make when finalizing the county budget. For County Executive Mark Elrich, the man who thinks all problems can be solved by an increase in taxes, the only choice was which taxes to raise, real property taxes or county income taxes. For the county council members and all of the wannabe county executives on the council, the idea of increasing taxes immediately prior to an election year was almost as unpopular as reducing union contracts. Both were a non-starter. Maricé, according to Bethesda magazine, the council preliminarily, they had a straw vote, approved a $7.6 billion operating budget for the next fiscal year without increasing taxes. This decision was achieved through a combination of strategic financial measures and collaborative efforts. How did they accomplish this? And why actually is the police union challenging the proposal to apply future retiree health benefits to pay for the excessive MCPS, if that's a tongue twister, MCPS costs?
Well, first, kudos to Kate Stewart. I think she shined through. I think the fact that she was able to get these groups all in a room and figure this budget out without increasing taxes, kudos to her. I think she shines in this because she has, she's been in an executive position as former mayor of Tacoma Park. But, for folks that may not be as I would say, that aren't as familiar with this specific responsibility that the county government does have is you have to fund into the future, right, up to a certain percent. I'm going to make up a percentile, but it's fairly high. By 2030, the county has to fund up to 75% of these retiree benefits. And so we're basically borrowing for ourselves from ourselves. And I think it was a creative and a smart way to address an issue that, right now all of the county residents are feeling, and that is, if we were to increase taxes, obviously it would not be popular, but also, just the economy and everything that's going on is just a non-starter, as you said. And so I think kudos to the county council, kudos to Kate Stewart. I think that's brilliant. But I understand that the FOP is also going to voice, its concern because they just want to make sure that their benefits are there when their retirees and mostly millennials, are going to come out retiring, making sure that they have those full pensions to cover what their needs are going to be in the future as retirees.
Well, I mean, there were some interesting comments by the county council and afterwards, and particularly from Gabe Alvarez, who, said he's really worried about what's going to happen in the future, that you can only kick this can down the road so far before you're going to have to make some hard, tough choices. So is the council just avoiding making tough choices now, or are they really going to address things in the future, Maricé? Or is it just election year politics as usual?
I don't think it's as usual. I think the issue coming out of Washington and the federal funding that we're getting is definitely a huge issue that all county governments are dealing with. But I agree. I don't think that this is a sustainable fix. I think that this is just temporarily, and we're going to have to come up with other ways to increase tax revenue. And I don't think that by increasing people's taxes is the way to go. I think by attracting, and listen, I'm a Democrat, but I'm a business owner. I'm very like techie, I would say, and I do want to attract like the Amazons of the world, which we lost to Northern Virginia. So I agree. I think we're going to have to come up with other sustainable solutions, and I don't think that borrowing from ourselves is the way to go forever.
So, Mark, let's start, Mark. The county executive had, initially proposed a 3.25% property tax increase, later revised that to a 1% income tax, which had been approved by the General Assembly. The council immediately unanimously rejected those, but there's a lot of other comments and voices that objected to the tax increases. The Committee to Control Montgomery County Spending described the council's budget as another exercise kicking the can down the road and does not address the root cause of the county spending beyond its means. Is there a growing taxpayer revolt that we're going to see in real time
certainly
during the
not if
next
there's
election?
not a tax increase. And I certainly agree with Maricé. I was pleasantly surprised to see the council take the action that it took and avoid that. I certainly agree that it's a short-term budgetary sleight of hand to delay the payments. Hopefully, the operative verb is delay the funding for the retirement benefits, health benefits. So that's good news. What's always amazing to me is these are changes, these are steps that Mark Elrick could have taken, but somehow I think he's got his fat finger on the press release to always go for the tax increase and negotiate from there. I would make one observation that MCPS goes up dramatically, significant increases, and this is in the context of basically having flat enrollments, despite projections that the enrollment would increase. So I think that we really, in future years, need to do a better job of looking at what are the appropriate funding levels for the school system.
Well, I want to, follow up with you, Mark, because my sense is that because of the actions of the General Assembly during the last session, and the possibility of a special session, which also may increase taxes, there is going to be I guess maybe a taxpayer revolt is the wrong term, but there are going to be a lot of people questioning the direction that the General Assembly and by effect,
well, absolutely. Let me make
a
clear differentiation between the reaction of taxpayers to what the General Assembly and the governor have done as opposed to Montgomery County. And I think I clearly want to make that distinction. We can certainly talk in more detail about what the state did.
Well, Maricé, this is, one of the difficulties in balancing a budget, as you know from your days as a legislator, is, income projection. And the county, the General Assembly has increased, taxes dramatically on the wealthy, and by increasing new tiered taxes, as well as a capital gains tax. Montgomery County has a high population of wealthy individuals, and if those people decide to leave, that's going to have a direct impact on Montgomery County. So what is your assessment of how, is the council taking all of these factors into account? I mean, right now, Montgomery County is the third highest state and local income tax rate in the country. It's not sustainable.
I agree with you on this one, Casey. I mean, and like I said, I think we're living unprecedented times. I think that Governor Moore and the General Assembly and their approval ratings actually also reflect that. I mean, the General Assembly has overwhelmingly had the support of Marylanders in terms of their performance, and and I think taxpayers and residents at large understand that we're not living normal times, and that we're having to address the issue with just the cut in federal funding, cuts in our jobs. We have a lot of dependency on federal jobs, and that's just a matter of fact. And so I think that combined, I think the average voter and even folks that may not even, just keep up with politics, they understand that in the greater scheme of things, we're dealing with unprecedented times.
So, Mark, just before, we're going to go to a break in a minute or two, but I want to just touch on the fact that, a heavyweight trade association, the Greater Capital Area Association of Realtors, came out very strong against the Ehrlich tax proposals. But they weren't the only ones that were voicing opposition to any tax increases.
I think there was real pushback for it. There's absolutely no question. And we'll talk about it when we talk about the state issues, but there's really an unsustainable fiscal approach of relying on fewer and fewer people, high income people with capital gains who depend on the stock market doing really well and for the generating revenues. And we've seen in states like California and New York, when you go down that road, you're really putting yourself on a fiscal roller coaster. And so that's very dangerous for the long term for the state of Maryland.
I think a lot of the politics of 2026 are wrapped in here. One of the council members that expressed an interest in increasing taxes was Will Jawando. So real quickly, we have a couple minutes left. Does it surprise you that Jawando came out so early with a campaign committee to run for county executive? I'll start with you, Maricé, and let you wrap up, Mark.
I'm not surprised. We know that Will has expressed and he actually filed for a public campaign finance committee, which means that he's going to have to meet a certain threshold of contributions from county residents. And so then, because Evan Glass had, he kicked off back in April, I'm not surprised. And because you have to give yourself time to get all these different residents, and then you can actually qualify for the county match. And so it makes sense that he would come out this early.
Well, I was going to
I'm not
say,
surprised.
you're absolutely right about the campaign finance issues. If you're David Trone and you can write yourself a check, or you're David Blair and you can write yourself a check, or Glenn Youngkin and you can write yourself a check, you can wait to when people are really paying attention. But one of the perverse aspects of the public financing system is it really creates an incentive, because you can only get contributions of a certain size and you have to reach certain numbers. It creates an incentive to lengthen the amount of time that a campaign takes place. So we shouldn't be surprised when we see that happen.
Well, from my personal experience, I ran with public financing, and I wouldn't say that it's perverse. If anything, I think it democratizes the opportunities to run. I don't come from wealth. I had to go door to door and raise that money from county residents. And so I admire candidates that go down that road. Well, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, yeah, it puts a lot more work on the backs of the candidates. And I think at the end of the day, it's not just, can I write myself a check? And and Andrew Friedson is a close friend of mine. I'm not getting involved or anything, but Andrew does have that advantage where he does have that money, and he's going to have more time to focus on his current job, and also that will feed into whatever goes on comes with his platform. I think that it does give you the advantage of, if you already have those campaign funds, it does give you the advantage to be out with your constituents and actually doing the job versus staying at home and doing like call time, because I hated call time with a passion. I hated it.
Well, we're going to have to wrap it up there. We're running out of time, and these are not the only two members of the county council that are thinking about running. And so we'll wait and see what happens during the summer.